Welcome to This Explainer. Look, if you've ever hit Friday afternoon feeling completely, utterly wiped out, or if you constantly find yourself muttering, "I just don't have enough time," well, you are exactly where you need to be. Today, we're unpacking a really profound classic philosophy on time management from the brilliant mind of Arnold Bennett. His book, How to Live on 24 Hours a Day, isn't just some rigid, boring set of scheduling tips. No, it's a direct intervention for the modern soul. We're going to take a close look at exactly why we feel so burned out all the time, and more importantly, how we can completely restructure the way we view our daily lives.
I want you to really stop and ask yourself, does your day just slip right through your fingers without a trace? It's incredibly frustrating, isn't it? You wake up, you rush to work, you come home absolutely exhausted, you scroll on your phone for a bit, and suddenly, boom, it's time to sleep again. You kind of feel like a passenger in your own life, totally drained by 5 p.m. with zero energy left for the things you actually care about. But what if I told you the problem isn't a lack of time at all? What if it's a fundamental misunderstanding of what time actually is?
To break free from this cycle, we need a major paradigm shift. So let's dive right into Section 1, the 24-hour miracle. Think about this for a second. Time is literally the most flawlessly, equally distributed thing on Earth. No amount of wealth, influence, or power can buy a single extra minute, and there's absolutely no way you can borrow from tomorrow's hours to live them today. You get exactly 24 hours, refreshed daily. It's an everyday miracle that we completely take for granted. But here is where we hit the core of the problem. We naturally divide our day into 3 slices, roughly 8 hours for sleep and 8 hours for work. But what about that third slice, those final 8 hours? The fundamental flaw in modern thinking is that the vast majority of us treat this final slice just as dead time. We use it as a waiting room, just a margin of rest to recover so we can barely survive the next workday. By doing this, we're effectively choosing to live only 1/3 of our actual lives.
Bennett hits the nail on the head here. He says time is the raw material out of which life is carved. Think about that. We already possess all the time there is. There are no hidden bonus hours you're suddenly going to unlock when you finally get that promotion or when the kids grow up. This raw material is in your hands right now. So, the problem is never the amount of time. The problem is how incredibly poorly we budget this daily gift.
And that brings us perfectly to Section 2, the myth of exhaustion and the start of the second day.
Now, you're probably sitting there thinking, wait a minute, I am legitimately exhausted after work. And I get it, you come home at 5 p.m. totally drained. But there is a massive, profound distinction between real physical exhaustion and routine-induced boredom. Bennett argues that your 5 p.m. fatigue is actually mostly an illusion. Think about it like this. If you came home feeling totally wiped out, but suddenly got a call with an unexpected invitation to something incredibly exciting, let's say front row tickets to see your all-time favorite band, I guarantee your exhaustion would vanish in a split second. You'd suddenly find this massive hidden reserve of energy. This proves that your body and mind aren't actually empty, they're just bored to tears by the predictable routine of your day.
Which brings us to this incredibly powerful number, 6. Once you strip away the commute and eating dinner, you realistically have about 6 solid hours left every single evening. Bennett calls this the second day. You have to stop framing this time as the tired, dragging tail end of your workday. Instead, you've got to view it as a completely independent day. It's a fresh start dedicated solely to your own soul, your own mind, and your own personal growth.
But, before we can conquer the evening, we have to talk about Section 3, taming the wandering mind.
Okay, be honest. How do you spend your commute? In our modern era, we usually spend our transit time rapidly scrolling through social media, skimming scattered news, just absorbing completely random information. This actually fatigues and fragments our focus before we even step foot into the workplace. Bennett uses a fantastic metaphor for this. The human mind is like a spoiled child. If you leave it completely unmonitored, it'll just run wild, bouncing from some anxious worry about the future straight to a random cringy memory from the past. You can have the most beautifully color-coded time management schedule in the world, but if you lack the mental muscle of focus, that schedule is entirely useless. You have to train the spoiled child.
So the crucial point here is to practice what Bennett calls mental gymnastics during your commute. It's basically a 3-step mental workout. First, pick one specific topic, maybe a philosophical problem or a really interesting concept from a book. Second, as you travel, hold your mind strictly to that topic. Inevitably, you're going to notice your mind wander off to the terrible traffic or to that annoying thing your colleague said yesterday. Third, forcefully pull your focus back to your chosen topic. It sounds incredibly simple, but trust me, it is exhausting at first. However, repeatedly forcing your mind back builds the absolute prerequisite muscle of concentration that you're going to need for your evening learning. All right, once you've tamed that focus, you are ready for Section 4, the 90-minute rule for reflection.
When you start setting up this evening routine, human nature is going to completely rebel against sudden, extreme changes. So aim for just 3 evenings a week, dedicating a maximum of 90 minutes. That is more than enough to create a staggering cumulative effect over the course of a year without it feeling like some oppressive chore. Now, what are you actually doing in those 90 minutes? Most people will immediately say, "Oh, I'll read." But Bennett draws a really sharp line here. Reading light, easy fiction is wonderful for relaxation, sure, but it presents the plot completely pre-digested for you. It doesn't challenge your intellect at all. He compares it to this. Trying to improve your mind by reading easy novels is literally like trying to build physical muscle just by sitting on the couch watching sports. To truly grow, you need the heavy lifting of deep reading. I'm talking challenging subjects like classic poetry, history, or philosophy. Things that force you to pause, scratch your head, and really grapple with the text. And here is the golden ratio of learning. If you dedicate 90 minutes to your evening routine, Bennett states very clearly that reading for 90 minutes straight actually makes you a fool who just hoards facts. Yeah, you're just accumulating data without actually digesting any of it. You must stop at the 45-minute mark. Close the book. The remaining 45 minutes are strictly reserved for deep internal reflection on what you just consumed.
So what happens in that reflection phase? You ask yourself the vital questions. What does the author really mean here? Do I actually agree or disagree with this, and why? How does this apply directly to my own life? This right here is the magic step, where mere words turn into etched wisdom. Bennett notes that this deep reflection helps you understand the universal laws of cause and effect in human behavior. When you truly understand why people act the way they do, your anger at an annoying coworker suddenly transforms into deep empathy and inner peace. You stop just reacting to the world, and you start actually understanding it.
Which brings us to our final part, Section 5, the traps of change and intellectual snobbery. Look, embarking on this whole journey of self-improvement, it is not a perfectly smooth ride. Let's look at the inevitable psychological traps you are definitely going to face as you try to reclaim those 24 hours. There are 3 major traps that love to destroy our new routines. We already touched on the first one, over-enthusiasm. If you try to overhaul your entire life overnight, you will crash, burn out, and revert right back to your old habits by next Tuesday. You have to start small. But the second and third traps, they are far more insidious, and they can actually damage your character and your peace of mind if you aren't super careful.
Let's talk about that second trap, which Bennett warns about very sternly: intellectual snobbery. As you read deep philosophy and start strengthening your mind, it is terrifyingly easy to start looking down on your friends and family who are just hanging out, watching TV, or chatting about trivial things. You might slowly morph into this rigid, arrogant machine who refuses to help a friend in need just because it interrupts your sacred reading hour. Please remember, this schedule is a tool to make you a better human being, not a weapon of isolation. True knowledge breeds flexibility, warmth, and a really profound sense of humility.
And finally, the trap of perfectionism. Actually, let's call it the all-or-nothing trap. There is going to be an evening where you are genuinely too tired, or a family crisis happens, or honestly, you just get lazy and binge-watch a show instead of doing your 90 minutes. When that happens, do not spiral into self-flagellation. Do not throw your hands up and declare the whole system a total failure. Perfection is the absolute enemy of progress here. Forgive yourself gently, and just remember the miracle we started with. Tomorrow morning, your account will be refreshed with 24 completely untouched, pristine hours.
We spend so much of our lives waiting for the stars to perfectly align before we start something. We wait for work to slow down, or for the kids to grow up, or for January 1st to roll around. But the stark reality? Conditions will never be perfect, and you will literally never have more time than the exact 24 hours you have right now. The time to reclaim your life is not next week. It is today. So, I leave you with this challenge. What are you going to read tonight? Stop waiting, claim your 90 minutes, and start actually living the second half of your day. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and I highly encourage you to go out there and absolutely conquer your next 24 hours.